Since the first thunder echoed through the wild skies, pain has walked beside humankind. It taught us to cry, then taught us to rise. The weak fear suffering, but the Stoics welcome it as the strictest teacher of the soul. They believe that in the fire of trials, the spirit is forged, and in the darkness of despair, the light of wisdom is born. Pain does not come to destroy, but to awaken. It does not come to punish, but to teach us how to love. Love with understanding, love with awareness, love with freedom. For only when one learns to smile through suffering does one grasp true strength. Not the strength to conquer the world, but the strength to conquer the storm within. Since the dawn of humanity, when people still lived among untamed forests and storms, pain has been the constant companion of existence. We are born in tears, grow through struggle, and mature through our wounds. No one escapes suffering. There are only those who face it, and those who flee from it. But the Stoics were different. They did not seek to avoid pain. They learned to look directly at it, understand it, and transform it into strength. To them, suffering was not an enemy, but a stern teacher. It is within the fire of pain that the soul is forged, tempered, strengthened, and illuminated. Stoic philosophy was never meant to make life easier. It was meant to make people strong enough to walk through what cannot be avoided. Epictetus, once bound in chains as a slave, understood the meaning of pain more deeply than anyone. He said, "It is not what happens to you that breaks you, but how you see it." He viewed every wound as a lesson for the soul, not to resent, but to understand, not to fear, but to awaken. To him, pain did not come to destroy, but to reveal the limits of human strength and the power that lies beyond those limits. When his body was confined, he discovered that his mind remained free. And within those chains, he found something that many free men never do: inner freedom, the kind that allows peace to exist even in suffering. For Epictetus, pain was no longer a scar, but a doorway to profound self-understanding. Marcus Aurelius, writing amidst the smoke and blood of war, saw pain as a natural part of existence. He did not view suffering as injustice, but as the inevitable cost of living in an imperfect world. "If it is natural," he wrote, "how can it be evil?" The Stoic learns to accept pain as they accept winter, unavoidable yet survivable. They do not run, they prepare. Each day, they train their minds to face discomfort without fear, to welcome the unwelcome without judgment. For they know, only by looking into darkness can one discover light. And that light does not come from the outside, but from within. A mind illuminated by reason and courage. Seneca once wrote, "Suffering teaches us what happiness never could." In his letters, he urged his students not to fear adversity, for hardship is the proving ground of character. The Stoics believed that a life without difficulty would leave people fragile and dependent, but a life of trials would make them strong and free. In suffering, they saw opportunity to discipline the mind, to strengthen endurance, to deepen serenity. Just as steel becomes hard only when tempered by flame, the soul becomes steadfast only when tested by pain. Thus, the Stoic does not pray for a painless life. They pray for the wisdom and fortitude to walk through pain unbroken. In the modern world, we are taught to avoid pain and seek pleasure, to silence negative feelings and hide our wounds. But Stoicism teaches the opposite. Let pain instruct you. Let it sharpen you, as a whetstone sharpens a blade. Within pain lies truth, awareness, and the chance to grow. When we stop fearing pain, we become free. When we observe it instead of cursing it, we begin to see that suffering is not meaningless. It is the raw material from which inner strength is born. And when we can be grateful even for our wounds, because they have made us deeper, wiser, and more compassionate, life itself ceases to be frightening. For when we make peace with pain, we make peace with existence itself. Pain is something no one desires, yet the Stoics believe that avoiding it only makes us weaker. They did not see suffering as punishment, but as nature's tool for tempering the soul. Just as fire does not destroy iron but hardens it, adversity does not break people. It forges them, if they are willing to learn. Epictetus often told his students, "Do not ask why this happened to me. Ask what I can learn from it." That sentence captures the spirit of Stoic philosophy, turning pain into a lesson, turning hardship into an opportunity for growth. The Stoic does not let suffering define them. They use it to recreate themselves. And with every step through difficulty, they discover that the greatest strength in life is not of the body, but of the spirit that can endure without bitterness. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Pain is only a perception of the body. It cannot touch the mind unless you allow it." To him, the difference between a free man and a slave lies in awareness. The free man knows he always has the power to choose his response. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. The Stoics accepted pain as a natural rhythm of life, like waves crashing upon the shore, unstoppable but endurable. They did not let emotions sweep them away. They observed them, studied them, and let them pass. In that calm observation, they discovered that pain is temporary, while the strength of reason endures. When the mind stands firm, every wound becomes a doorway to deeper self-knowledge and understanding of life itself. Seneca compared pain to a strict teacher we cannot refuse. "No one learns virtue in comfort," he wrote. That is why he urged people to welcome hardship as part of their moral training. When betrayed, we learn forgiveness. When hurt, we learn patience. When we lose, we learn gratitude. Every pain, if observed with awareness, contains a seed of wisdom. The Stoic does not view suffering as tragedy, but as education for the soul. They do not ask, "How can I avoid pain?" They ask, "How can I become better because of it?" That single shift in question changes everything. It gives them strength, resilience, and peace, even when life turns violent. Epictetus once recounted how, when his cruel master broke his leg, he calmly said, "I told you that you would break it." Not because he didn't feel pain, but because he had learned to accept what could not be changed. He understood that anger or resentment only deepened suffering. Instead, he saw it as part of fate, a situation he could not control, but could still respond to with dignity. For the Stoic, suffering is a training ground, not a prison. They do not ask, "Why me?" but rather, "This has happened. How can I make it count?" That mindset made them the freest people alive, not because they escaped pain, but because they mastered the way to face it. Today, as humanity grows terrified of discomfort and pain, Stoic philosophy reminds us, avoidance breeds fear. Confrontation dissolves it. Every scar is not a mark of defeat, but proof of life. A soul that has suffered and yet remains kind is a soul that has awakened. The Stoics teach that no one can live without being hurt, but we can choose whether those wounds make us bitter or wise, hardened or compassionate. Only when we have known pain do we truly understand empathy. And when we understand empathy, we no longer fear pain, for it has become a bridge that connects us to others, not a wall that separates us from the world. In the Stoic worldview, pain is a test, a measure of how mature the soul has become. They believed that no form of training runs deeper than confronting suffering. Just as the blacksmith tempers steel in fire, life tempers the soul through adversity. A weak mind complains in hardship. A strong one smiles and says, "This is my chance to grow stronger." The Stoic does not seek comfort. They seek endurance. They know that a life spent only in ease and safety makes the spirit soft and rusty. But if one dares to step into pain with courage, every step through the fire makes them steadier. To the Stoics, pain does not come to destroy. It comes to awaken the strongest part within us, the part that only emerges when everything else has fallen apart. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If something causes you pain, remember that it is part of nature, and nature does nothing in vain." To him, suffering was not the fault of the world, but an opportunity to understand its laws. When a loved one dies, he did not teach indifference. He taught understanding, that everything is born and fades, and this is the natural order. The Stoic does not deny emotion. They simply refuse to be ruled by it. They allow themselves to feel pain, but not to drown in despair. In that acceptance, they find freedom. They understand that resisting what cannot be avoided will only break them. But if they learn to bend like water, they can flow around every stone in their path. Seneca once observed that some people only discover their true strength after losing everything. We never know how strong we are until we are forced to be strong, he wrote. His words echo through generations of Stoics, those who refused to bow before suffering, but instead turned it into a song of human resilience. When they lost, they did not lament but asked, "What is this trying to teach me?" When betrayed, they did not seek revenge, but took it as a lesson in forgiveness. When they failed, they did not collapse, but saw it as a step in the path of growth. It is in those moments of apparent weakness that they became strongest, for they knew that real strength is not the absence of pain, but the ability to rise from it. Epictetus taught his students, "No pain is meaningless if you use it to train your mind." Every time we endure hurt and remain calm, he said, we forge a new layer of armor for the soul. Every time we face fear without running, we expand the borders of our inner freedom. The Stoic does not seek to make pain disappear. They seek to live with it meaningfully. They face it, observe it, and then transform it into wisdom. And once they can do that, they no longer fear. Because when you can turn suffering into strength, nothing in this world can ever make you weak again. In today's world, we easily forget that pain is part of being alive. We try to silence it with medicine, distraction, work, and endless busyness. But the Stoics remind us, if we never sit quietly to listen to our pain, we will never truly understand ourselves. For in the silence of suffering, we hear the truest voice of the soul. It speaks of our fears, our losses, the things we must release. And when we dare to listen, we stop being victims. We become students of pain. The moment we accept suffering as part of the journey, we begin to walk into real freedom. Because freedom does not come from avoiding pain. It comes from knowing we can still be at peace within it. That is the art of living the Stoics left to humankind. The Stoics did not see pain as an enemy to be vanquished, but as nature's test, to prove that a person still holds dominion over themselves. They believed that if a storm could sweep away one's reason, then it was not life that had failed, but the individual. That is why they trained daily, not to escape the storm, but to maintain balance within it. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself, "If you suffer, remember that your body can endure more than you think, and your mind is even stronger." Those words were not empty comfort. They were a call to awaken. For only when we accept suffering as part of the journey do we stop being controlled by it. When we no longer ask, "Why did this happen to me?" and instead ask, "How will I face it?" we take a monumental step toward inner freedom. Epictetus said, "It is not events that disturb us, but our judgments about them." This became one of the cornerstones of Stoic philosophy. Physical pain may be real, but emotional suffering often stems from how we interpret what happens to us. The same wound can break one person in bitterness while strengthening another in gratitude for the lesson it brings. The Stoic chooses the latter path. They believe the mind is the sole governor of emotion, and once the mind is trained, one can train how pain is experienced. This mastery of perception allows them to remain unmoved by external chaos. The storms may rage, but within them, the sea is still. Seneca once wrote, "Nothing is painful if it is viewed with reason." He did not deny human emotion, but he warned against letting emotion take the reins. When pain arrives, the Stoic neither rejects it nor fakes happiness, but also does not allow it to lead them into despair. They look pain in the eye, study it, understand its cause, and then accept it as part of reality. That perspective turns pain from a burden into an object of observation. When we can look at pain as an observer rather than a victim, we achieve freedom. In that state, we are no longer enduring pain. We are living with it consciously, actively, and firmly. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, "Imagine that pain is like smoke. It passes, but it cannot harm the soul." Within that image lies a simple truth. Pain does not last forever. Only we can choose whether to hold onto it or let it drift away. The Stoic knows that no one can avoid being hurt, but everyone can choose how to respond. When we release resistance, pain grows lighter. When we stop blaming, we begin to learn the lesson it carries. And when we can feel gratitude even towards suffering, we transform it into strength. This is not numbness, it is awareness, a state where one feels deeply, yet is not consumed by feeling. In today's world, obsessed with perfection and allergic to discomfort, Stoic philosophy offers a liberating truth. Peace does not come from avoiding pain, but from seeing it differently. When we accept it, pain ceases to be a threat and becomes a reminder that we are alive, still growing, still capable of feeling. We cannot change what has happened, but we can change what it means to us. If we let pain make us bitter, we lose. But if we let it shape us into someone wiser, we triumph. And in that triumph, we do not merely overcome pain, we transcend the fearful, fragile self that once tried to run from it. To the Stoics, suffering was the truest test of human character. When life is easy, anyone can appear calm and virtuous. But in times of loss, betrayal, or despair, that is when one's true self is revealed. Epictetus once said, "If you wish to know how strong someone is, look at them when they suffer." Pain, to the Stoics, is a mirror that strips away all pretense. They did not shy away from that moment because they understood that no strength is ever born from comfort. Only by walking through suffering does a person truly come to know themselves, their limits, their courage, and the quiet power of rising after each fall. Marcus Aurelius, an emperor surrounded by war, understood that pain is not an ending, but the beginning of transformation. He wrote, "Everything that happens fits with nature. If you endure it properly, you have turned it into good." The Stoics believed that suffering does not darken life. Resistance and resentment do. When we accept pain as part of life's natural order, it loses its power to wound us. Like a sailor who cannot command the wind, but can adjust his sails, a person cannot avoid adversity, but can choose how to move through it with steadiness. In that active acceptance, pain becomes a teacher, and hardship becomes a path to enlightenment. Seneca compared pain to a strict but just teacher. "No one becomes great who has not suffered," he wrote. Ease does not build character. Difficulty does. The Stoic embraces suffering as an essential part of growth. Through endurance, they learn patience. Through hurt, they learn compassion. Through loss, they learn gratitude for what remains. They do not see pain as something to eliminate, but as mental training sent by life itself. Every wound, when viewed through the light of reason, becomes a lesson, a reminder that we are still alive, still learning, still evolving. Epictetus taught, "If you wish to improve, think of yourself as entering a forge where all that is weak in you will be melted away." This was no metaphor. It was the truth of becoming. Each experience of pain is a kind of rebirth. Suffering burns away illusions, vanity, and empty desires, leaving behind only what is real: resilience, calm, and the capacity to love more deeply. The Stoic does not flee the fire. They step into it to find themselves. And when they emerge, they are no longer victims of fate, but the blacksmiths of their own souls. They understand that to be strong, one must be tested. To be free, one must be willing to endure. And to find peace, one must learn to smile even in the storm. Today, when humanity fears pain more than anything, Stoicism stands as a reminder of a forgotten truth. Pain does not come to destroy, it comes to illuminate. Every time life challenges you, ask, "How can I become better because of this?" Instead of running away, listen to what pain is trying to teach. Beneath every tear lies a lesson not yet learned. And only when you learn it will pain let you go. Once you understand that, wounds no longer frighten you, for each scar is a mark of growth. Looking back, you realize that it was in your darkest moments that you found the light born from your own inner strength, revealed through the fire of suffering. Pain, to the Stoics, was not something to be eradicated, but something to be understood. They looked deeply into its nature and realized that most human suffering does not come from events themselves, but from our reactions to them. Epictetus said, "No one can harm you unless you allow it." What seems paradoxical in that statement is actually profoundly liberating. He did not deny emotion. He merely separated it from the self. Emotions are natural, he taught. We can feel sadness, anger, or fear, but we need not let them dictate our behavior. When we learn to observe pain instead of being swept away by it, we begin to detach ourselves from suffering. Like one standing on the riverbank, watching the current flow, we still see the raging water, but we are no longer carried by it. And in that awareness begins the birth of inner strength. Marcus Aurelius, amid the relentless years of war, wrote in his journals, "Pain is what the body feels. Suffering is what the mind chooses." This was not mere philosophy, but the daily practice of an emperor living in chaos. He knew he could not stop the world from collapsing, but he could stop himself from collapsing with it. When faced with loss, betrayal, or physical pain, he chose acceptance, not as resignation, but as understanding that everything belongs to nature. Pain is natural, and so is healing. When we let nature fulfill its laws, we no longer struggle against it. In releasing the need for control, we rediscover peace. For the only thing we truly command is not the world, but our mind. Seneca compared human beings to a pine tree on a mountainside, made strong only by enduring the wind. "If you wish to grow tall," he wrote, "allow yourself to be tested." To him, pain was not just a trial, but the very condition for growth. No roots can deepen without hard soil. No soul can steady itself without being shaken. The Stoics understood that life would never align perfectly with our desires, and precisely because of that, it was the ideal ground for training. They did not pray for calm seas. They prayed for the skill to stay calm when the sea rose. They did not wish to be shielded from pain. They wished for the wisdom to comprehend it. And in that acceptance, they found what everyone else was searching for: inner freedom. Epictetus told his students, "When you suffer, do not say, 'I have lost,' but say, 'I have paid the price for a lesson.' That lesson may be costly. It may draw blood and tears, but it is a fair price for wisdom. All deep understanding passes through the gate of pain. Those who have never suffered cannot truly understand. Those who have never lost cannot truly appreciate." The Stoics taught that suffering does not come to punish. It comes to teach us how to love life properly, not through possession, but through gratitude. When we give thanks even for what has hurt us, our hearts begin to expand. When we stop asking, "Why me?" and start saying, "Thank you for the chance to learn," we step out of darkness into light, the light of understanding, forgiveness, and maturity. Today, in a world that fears every crack in the soul, Stoicism invites us to see those cracks as the places where light enters. Those who have suffered most deeply are often the kindest and most understanding, because they have learned that every being carries an invisible burden. When we realize this, we stop judging and stop resenting. What remains is compassion, the softest yet strongest power of all. The Stoic does not seek immortality. They seek serenity. They know that life will always bring loss, but a soul that learns from suffering will never be poor. Looking back, we see that the very pains that once sought to destroy us are the ones that made us more alive, more profound, and more free. In the pages of Stoic philosophy, pain is not merely something to be endured. It is an opportunity to express human dignity. Seneca once wrote, "When you cannot avoid suffering, let the way you endure it be an example to others." That single line captures the very essence of Stoicism, transforming darkness into light. The Stoics never promised escape from pain. They taught mastery over it. True strength, they believed, is not measured by how often we win, but by how often we rise after falling. When we endure suffering with calmness, kindness, and without complaint, we reveal humanity's deepest strength, the ability to preserve virtue even amid adversity. Marcus Aurelius recorded in Meditations, "If you cannot change the circumstance, change the way you view it." To him, pain did not come to destroy. It came to test how deeply one understood their own philosophy. He saw every hardship as a lesson sent personally to refine his soul, not as punishment, but as discipline. In illness, he learned humility. In loss, gratitude. In betrayal, forgiveness. The Stoics did not avoid the darkness, for they knew only in darkness could virtue shine. And it is precisely when everything seems lost that one discovers what can never be taken away, the steadfast soul and the peace that no force can break. Epictetus, the former slave who once endured the whip, stood as the living proof of this wisdom. Physical pain could not extinguish his inner fire. From the lowest of conditions, he proved that freedom does not come from the absence of chains, but from the absence of inner bondage. When you cannot control what happens, he taught, control how you respond. From within captivity, he wrote a philosophy that liberated humanity from fear, anger, and resentment. For him, pain itself does not enslave. Fear of pain does. When we stop fearing, we are free. When we stop resisting the inevitable, we find peace. And when we embrace pain as part of the journey, it becomes our power. Seneca advised his students, accept pain as part of the art of living. He likened life to a play. We cannot choose our roles, but we can choose how to perform them. If fate casts you as the sufferer, play the part with courage. If life tests you with loss, meet it with kindness. The Stoics believed that true character is not revealed in calm times, but in despair. To remain gentle while wounded, rational while provoked, and faithful to goodness when the world turns dark, this is mastery over pain. It is what the Stoics called the art of suffering well, an art that can only be learned through experience. In our modern world, where people often hide their wounds behind forced smiles, Stoicism reminds us of a simple truth. We don't have to be strong all the time. We just must not abandon ourselves when we hurt. Pain does not make us weak. Shame about our pain does. When we face our wounds, acknowledge them, accept them, and learn from them, we are reborn. The Stoics taught that pain is temporary, but our response to it endures in the memory of the soul. If we choose calm, forgiveness, and gratitude, we transform suffering into art, the art of living, the art of growing, and the art of loving life even when it is imperfect. To the Stoics, pain was the truest mirror of the soul. In times of comfort, we easily mistake familiarity for self-knowledge. But only when suffering arrives, when what we love is taken away, when everything collapses, do we truly see who we are. Epictetus said, "Suffering doesn't change us, it reveals us." Pain doesn't create character. It strips away the disguises we wear. In suffering, there is no room for pretense, no fake calm, no false virtue, no imagined strength. Pain is light that exposes truth, and if we dare to look into it, we discover our truest self, unpolished, unguarded, and still learning how to rise from the ruins. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "A man is not defined by what happens to him, but by how he responds." The Stoics understood that loss is inevitable, but what we do with that loss is a choice. When we lose someone dear, we can let grief consume us, or let it teach us to love more deeply while we still can. When we fail, we can drown in shame, or let it teach us humility and resilience. Pain is a form of energy. It can burn us down, or it can warm our soul, depending on how we use it. The Stoic chooses the latter. They do not ask, "Why is life unfair?" but rather, "What can I do with this pain to become better?" That question marks the line between the defeated and the awakened. Seneca called pain the teacher of depth. He wrote, "When life knocks you down, be grateful. It has taught you humility. When you lose, be grateful. You have learned to let go. When you hurt, be grateful. You can still feel." The Stoics did not glorify pain for its own sake. They valued what it brings, awakening. Only those who have suffered truly know how to love. Only those who have wandered in darkness understand the worth of light. Only those who have fallen understand the sacredness of standing again. They did not flee suffering, for every wound was a chance to be reborn. The more a soul endures, the more transparent it becomes, like a gem that shines only after passing through fire. Epictetus taught, "Do not resent adversity. It is your teacher. Without it, you would never know your strength. The Stoics believed that no experience is meaningless. Every loss, every betrayal, every wound is part of the soul's refinement. Pain does not arrive to make us miserable. It arrives to awaken us from illusions of control, from arrogance, from the belief that we are invincible. Once we accept that all things are fragile, we stop fearing loss. And when fear fades, freedom begins. In that freedom, pain ceases to be an enemy and becomes a companion. A reminder that every tear has value, every scar has purpose, and every fall is an invitation to rise stronger. Today, as humanity chases happiness by avoiding discomfort, Stoicism offers a different path. Go through it. Happiness is not the absence of pain, but the ability to find peace within it. When we learn this, we no longer live to avoid pain, we live to understand it. We no longer fear being hurt, we are grateful to have felt. We no longer curse fate, we learn to walk beside it. The Stoic finds freedom within hardship, for they understand that life need not be perfect to be beautiful. It only needs to be lived with calm, courage, and clarity. Then, pain is no longer tragedy. It becomes the raw material from which we forge strength, wisdom, and compassion, the three brightest jewels of the human soul. To the Stoics, suffering was not the end. It was the beginning of rebirth. Epictetus once said, "Do not wish for life to be easier, wish to be stronger." In that simple phrase lies the essence of Stoic philosophy. The world will not bend to our will, but we can shape ourselves to meet the world. When we stop praying for calm seas and start learning to steer through the storm, fear loses its grip. Pain then ceases to be an invisible enemy and becomes a teacher, a guide that trains the mind. To the Stoics, every hardship is a chance to cultivate virtue. If life brings them to their knees, they rise with gratitude, knowing they've been given another lesson. In that acceptance, they find what modern humanity often loses: serenity amid chaos. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor, once asked, "Why should I fear what is part of nature?" To him, pain, loss, illness, and death were not intrusions, but natural elements of existence. To resent them would be as absurd as resenting the sunset. The Stoics sought harmony with nature, not through resignation, but through understanding that everything has its reason to be. When we are hurt, perhaps it is a lesson in compassion. When we lose, perhaps it teaches detachment. When we fall, perhaps it teaches endurance. Every experience, no matter how painful, carries a fragment of wisdom, and only those calm enough to receive it can see it. The Stoic does not live to avoid pain. They live to learn from it. Seneca wrote, "Pain never comes alone. It always brings the gift of awareness." He recounted that during his years of illness, as his body weakened, his spirit grew stronger. The limits of the flesh taught him that happiness does not depend on what we possess, but on how we think. The Stoics saw the body as a ship and the mind as its captain. When the ship is damaged, the captain can still steer. When storms rage, the captain can still remain composed. Pain, seen through the lens of wisdom, ceases to be a destroyer and becomes a craftsman of the soul. Once that lesson is learned, nothing can truly break us, for we understand that strength comes not from muscle, but from inner steadiness. Epictetus taught, "Do not waste your pain. Each wound offers a choice. Let it make you bitter, or let it make you wiser." The Stoic chooses the latter. They do not deny pain, nor do they let it define them. They observe it, learn from it, and move forward. In doing so, pain ceases to be a scar and becomes a symbol of growth. A person who has suffered yet remains kind has reached the highest freedom. Nothing can strip away their goodness. That ability to stay gentle in suffering is the noblest victory Stoicism seeks. Today, in a world obsessed with being always happy, the Stoic reminder is more necessary than ever. Happiness is not the absence of pain, but the art of living with it. It is not about denying what hurts us, but understanding, accepting, and transcending it. When we see suffering as a natural part of life, we stop running from it, and in that stillness, pain loses its power. Then we do not merely survive adversity, we are reborn through it. This is what the Stoics called inner triumph, when pain is no longer the end, but the starting point of a calmer, wiser, and more resilient self. In the Stoic world, suffering is not merely a test, it is a form of enlightenment. They believe that, just as fire cannot choose its fuel, humans cannot choose their circumstances, but they can choose how they burn. Epictetus once said, "Fire tests gold, adversity tests men." Those words are more than philosophy. They are a compass for anyone living through the storm. The Stoic does not wish for a world with less pain. They wish to become strong enough to endure it. For they know that no one truly understands peace until they have passed through chaos. And within that struggle, they find a light. Not the blinding brilliance of the sun, but a steady glow in the dark. The light of awareness, resilience, and inner strength forged in the fire of suffering. Marcus Aurelius wrote near the end of his life, "Nothing happens to me that is not destined to help me grow." To him, no tragedy was meaningless, for everyone held a lesson. When war ravaged his empire, he learned impermanence. When loved ones died, he learned love. When illness struck, he learned acceptance. The Stoics saw suffering not as disaster, but as a spiritual map, each wound pointing the way deeper into the soul. They did not ask why fate was cruel, but how they could turn cruelty into wisdom. That question freed them from victimhood. They were not spared pain, but they were given understanding to walk through it without losing themselves. Seneca once wrote to a grieving friend, "Your pain is real, but do not let it devour your soul. Let it teach you to love more deeply, for now you know how fragile love is." In those words lies the essence of Stoicism, not cold detachment, but conscious compassion. The Stoics did not suppress emotion. They refused to be enslaved by it. They wept when they must, yet their tears were not signs of weakness, but of honesty. They knew that only by feeling pain fully could one allow it to pass. And when it did, what remained was not emptiness, but profound understanding of human connection, impermanence, and the preciousness of every living moment. Epictetus taught his students, "When you are tested, do not pray for a lighter burden, pray for stronger shoulders." This was not a call to blind endurance, but an affirmation of choice. When we beg life to be easier, we grow weaker. When we train ourselves to be stronger, we grow free. The Stoic hones the mind as one sharpens a sword, tempered by failure, polished by pain. They do not fear hardship, for they understand that no suffering is wasted if it makes them kinder and more awake. And when they emerge from pain with serenity intact, they are not merely survivors. They are reborn, stronger, clearer, and more grateful for life. In today's world, where people flee from suffering through medication, distraction, and illusions of happiness, the Stoic reminder is more vital than ever. There is no true freedom without pain. Suffering is the one teacher that cannot be bribed. It cares nothing for status, wealth, or fame. It visits everyone equally, fair and ruthless. Yet in that fairness lies equality. Those who learn from it grow. Those who flee remain afraid. When we face suffering with courage and faith, we do not just overcome hardship, we transcend our own limits. Then pain ceases to be a wound and becomes a doorway to peace, to wisdom, to the quiet realization that true strength is not power, but the ability to smile in the midst of the storm. The Stoics saw pain as a purifying fire, not one that destroys, but one that refines. Just as metal is forged in the furnace, the human soul becomes brighter and stronger only after enduring the heat of trial. Epictetus once said, "When you face suffering, do not ask why it happened to you. Ask how you can use it to become better." This was not mere acceptance, but an invitation to transformation. The Stoic does not passively endure, they actively transmute. They understand that suffering is not punishment, it is opportunity to learn, to strengthen, to evolve. When they look at pain through the eyes of a student rather than a victim, it loses its power. It no longer destroys, it teaches. Pain becomes the silent instructor, guiding the soul toward resilience and wisdom. Marcus Aurelius, surrounded by betrayal and war, remained calm and steadfast. He wrote in Meditations, "Nothing happens to me that nature has not willed. If nature wills it, then I too will it." For him, harmony with nature did not mean resignation. It meant trust in the deeper order of the universe. Suffering was part of that order, just as winter must precede spring. The Stoic does not try to skip the winters of life. They learn to live within them, to find beauty in frost and stillness in snow. They know that if they endure patiently, the spring of peace will come, not because the world changes, but because they have. Seneca viewed suffering as a mirror reflecting human strength. He wrote, "Without adversity, virtue is only theory." Even during exile, he wrote letters on courage, kindness, and serenity. He taught that when we lose everything external, we discover what can never be lost: virtue. The Stoic does not fear loss, because they know that no one can take away what resides within the soul. Wealth, fame, and status may vanish, but wisdom, compassion, and calm endure. Pain reminds them that what truly matters is indestructible. And when we build our lives upon those unshakable values, fear itself begins to dissolve. Epictetus also advised, "If you wish for peace, do not wish for the world to be as you desire. Wish to accept it as it is." At first, it sounds somber, but it is, in truth, the key to freedom. When we stop forcing the world to fit our ideals, we begin to truly live within it. When we stop resisting reality, we end the exhausting war against what cannot be changed. The Stoic accepts not from weakness, but from wisdom, knowing that acceptance is the first step to transcendence. They do not bow before pain. They simply refuse to let it steer them. When we can say yes to life, even when it hurts, we are already halfway to peace. In our age of constant comfort-seeking, the Stoic lesson is more vital than ever. They remind us that a life without pain is not a happy life, it is an empty one. It is our wounds, our stumbles, our heartbreaks that make us real. Pain humbles us, teaches us love, and awakens empathy. It is the red thread connecting all souls that have ever suffered. And through those cracks, the light of wisdom enters. When we face pain with gratitude instead of fear, it can no longer enslave us. For we know that every storm we survive leaves us stronger, clearer, and closer to freedom than we have ever been. In Stoic philosophy, suffering is not something to be erased, but something to be understood and used. Epictetus once told his students, "Nothing is evil unless your mind makes it so." He did not deny the reality of pain. He revealed that our perception of it determines whether it becomes our enemy or our ally. The Stoics understood that while pain is inevitable, misery is optional, because misery is a reaction, and reactions can be mastered. When we change the way we interpret an event, we strip it of its power. Acceptance turns pain into a lesson. Learning from it becomes victory, not over life, but over the mind that once feared it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "It is not the event that harms a man, but his judgment of it." For him, everything begins in thought. If we see life as a chain of injustices, we will live in resentment. If we see it as a journey of learning, we will live in growth. The Stoics chose the latter. They knew that even when the world outside is in turmoil, the mind can remain calm. When betrayed, they chose compassion. When grieving, they chose gratitude. Seen through reason, pain becomes a patient teacher, one that trains endurance, humility, and love for life not only under sunshine, but also in the rain. Seneca wrote, "No one can be happy who has not suffered." It sounds paradoxical, yet it holds deep truth. Happiness does not come from avoiding pain, but from understanding it. The Stoics believed that joy and suffering are inseparable, as light cannot exist without shadow. Because we know pain, we appreciate pleasure. Because we have lost, we learn to cherish. Because we have struggled, we learn that peace is not guaranteed, it is earned. The Stoic does not wish for a calm sea. They wish to become a skilled sailor. And each time they survive a storm, they value calm waters more. Not because calm is easy, but because they know how rare and precious it is. Epictetus taught, "When you suffer, do not ask, 'Why me?' Ask, 'Why not me?' Pain," he said, "is part of being human. No one is exempt." Acceptance of this truth dissolves the illusion of victimhood. The Stoic sees suffering as the invisible thread that binds humanity together. Those who have endured can empathize. Those who have lost can comfort. When we realize that every soul carries its own wounds, we stop judging and start understanding. In that understanding, pain ceases to isolate. It becomes connection. And within that shared human experience, compassion emerges as the most powerful medicine of all. Today, in a world obsessed with masking pain behind forced smiles, Stoicism reminds us, courage is not the absence of tears, but the strength to face what causes them. Only by confronting our suffering can we truly comprehend it. And once we understand, we begin to let go. The Stoic does not move past pain by forgetting it. They transform it into wisdom. They allow it to remain within them, not as a scar, but as a lesson. Over time, what once brought them to their knees becomes a source of peace, strength, and inspiration for others. That is the quiet alchemy of Stoicism, the art of walking through suffering and emerging not bitter, but illuminated. To the Stoics, suffering is not a flaw in life. It is an essential part of spiritual growth. Just as a seed must break apart before it can sprout, a person must shed layers of comfort before they can truly awaken. Epictetus once said, "No one becomes great in times of ease." It is a simple but profound truth. There is no path to wisdom that does not pass through the valley of pain. For it is only in suffering that we are forced to look inward, to face the parts of ourselves we avoid, when life is pleasant. Only under pressure do we discover whether our faith is genuine, our strength enduring, and our love sincere. The Stoic does not fear loss, for they know every loss hides a lesson. They do not fear pain, for they understand it as the language through which life teaches us who we truly are. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, "When life causes you pain, remember, it does not act against you, but for you." To him, pain was not an enemy, but a tool of nature, meant to refine the soul. Just as the body grows stronger through resistance, the spirit grows steadier through struggle. The Stoics believed that without pain, life would remain shallow. People would never know courage, nor understand gratitude. Only when everything collapses do we see what truly matters. And in the darkest moments, when nothing external remains, we find the one thing no one can take, the strength within. During his exile, Seneca wrote, "Be grateful for the trials, for through them you become worthy of yourself." He did not see adversity as a curse, but as a gift wrapped in ugly paper. When external things are stripped away, the treasures of the inner world begin to reveal themselves. Pain, he believed, teaches balance, the delicate harmony between hope and acceptance, desire and surrender. The Stoic learns to live without being ruled by circumstance. And in that quiet composure, they find joy, the simple joy of fearing nothing. For one who has walked through suffering and still holds compassion in their heart can no longer be conquered. Epictetus often reminded his students, "When you feel wronged, remember, it is an opportunity to practice philosophy." The meaning was not cold detachment, but a call to transformation. Every hardship becomes a chance to live virtue. When insulted, it is a chance to practice patience. When disappointed, to practice perseverance. When grieving, to practice gratitude. Stoicism is not a theory on a page. It is alive in every reaction we choose. When we face pain with reason instead of rage, with kindness instead of bitterness, we embody the Stoic spirit, one who refuses to be defined by the world and instead defines themselves by how they face it. In our modern age, where people seek shortcuts to escape pain, the Stoic reminder resounds as timeless wisdom. Suffering is not an enemy. It is a teacher. It does not come to punish, but to awaken. And when we can thank our pain, we are no longer bound by it. We can look upon our old wounds without trembling, knowing they shaped the person we have become. In that understanding, we transcend not just pain, but the fear of pain. And that, the Stoics taught, is true freedom. Not freedom from the world, but freedom from the chains within ourselves. In the Stoic journey, pain is never an accident. It is part of a greater design, one that human reason can only comprehend after walking through it. Epictetus said, "Everything that happens is necessary for the growth of the soul." To him, suffering was not the fault of fate, but the language the universe uses to teach us lessons we were not ready to learn in comfort. When a door closes, it is not punishment. It is an invitation to look inward. When someone we love leaves, it is not just loss. It is a reminder that true love lies not in holding on, but in letting go. The Stoic does not curse fate. They see it as a patient teacher, sometimes harsh, but always just. Marcus Aurelius, who lost his wife, children, and friends during the long years of war, still wrote, "Everything that happens is natural, and nothing natural is evil." His words were not born of indifference, but of profound acceptance, the understanding that life inevitably brings pain, and that peace lies in embracing that truth. He knew that trying to change what lies beyond our control brings only frustration. But if we change the way we perceive things, the world itself transforms. The Stoic does not try to fix the world. They work on themselves. And once they do, the world can no longer threaten them. In the stillness of their mind, they see that every pain has a purpose. Every loss opens a new path, if only we are calm enough to see it. Seneca wrote, "Welcome everything that happens as if you had chosen it." That is the height of inner freedom, to not only accept fate, but to walk alongside it. The Stoic does not live as a passive sufferer, but as a collaborator with the universe. They believe that everything that happens contributes to their completion, even when its meaning is not yet clear. When pain arrives, they do not ask, "Why me?" but instead say, "This is my part in the greater plan." And with that mindset, despair cannot take hold. For when we believe that pain has purpose, we no longer feel punished. We feel refined. That faith turns endurance into awakening, where we no longer resist life, but move with it, steadier, wiser, and lighter. In his later teachings, Epictetus told his students, "When life takes something from you, know that it is teaching you how to live without it." A simple sentence, but one filled with power. It reminds us that no loss is meaningless, because each one teaches independence, detachment, and unconditional love. The Stoic does not fear loss, for they understand that nothing truly belongs to us except our mind and our virtue. When we lose wealth, we learn moderation. When we lose status, we learn humility. When we lose loved ones, we learn the depth of love itself. And when we lose faith, we learn to rebuild it with wisdom and compassion. To the Stoic, every pain carries a gift. We are simply too blind to see it until the ache has passed. Today, in a restless world where people break under even small losses, Stoic philosophy reminds us, peace does not come from everything going our way. It comes from learning to accept things as they are. When we stop trying to control the uncontrollable, the mind is set free. When we embrace suffering as part of life's design, we cease to be victims of fate and become its companions. And with that perspective, pain becomes lighter, like breath, because deep down, we know it is shaping us into our most complete selves. This is the art of facing pain the Stoics left to humanity. Not the art of avoiding it, but the art of transforming it into light that guides the way forward. The Stoics believed that pain was not merely a test of fate, but a doorway through which one could touch the purest essence of the self. Epictetus once said, "No soul becomes noble without suffering." When pain strikes, it strips away the illusions we cling to: pride, the fantasy of control, endless desire. It forces us to confront the unchangeable truth. We are only a small part of a vast universe, and the only thing we truly command is our response. Once we grasp this, pain ceases to be an enemy and becomes a teacher of humility. The Stoic does not fear suffering, for they understand it as the gate to awakening. And when we walk through that gate, we no longer live by instinct, but by wisdom, the light that can only emerge from the darkness of trial. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you let go of resentment, pain can no longer harm you." To him, most human suffering does not come from the events themselves, but from our resistance to them. The Stoic trains the mind to be like water, soft but never weak, adaptable but never shapeless. When hurt, they neither flee nor drown in emotion. They allow pain to flow through them, just as the sea lets waves pass without clinging to the foam. Within that softness lies quiet strength, the power of acceptance. For when we accept, we are no longer torn between what is and what we wish it to be. We return to the present moment, and in the present, nothing is frightening. Peace, then, is not a reward. It is the natural state of a mind in harmony with life. Seneca emphasized, "No one teaches courage better than fear and pain themselves." He saw suffering as a torch illuminating the hidden capacities within us. Only when cornered do we discover that we can endure more, love deeper, and forgive wider than we imagined. The Stoics called this the hidden grace of pain. For when we emerge from a storm, we are not merely survivors, we are reborn. We become more sensitive to others' pain, more grateful for small joys, more aware of the gift of being alive. Those who have never suffered cannot truly understand. Those who have never lost cannot truly love. That is why the Stoic does not avoid pain. They walk through it with gratitude, bowing before their stern teacher. Epictetus once said that people often asked how to stay calm when insulted or hurt. He replied, "Think of yourself as in a school, where every insult is an exam." This captures the essence of Stoicism, turning every adversity into a lesson for the soul. If someone hurts us, it is a chance to practice forgiveness. If fate takes something away, it is a chance to learn detachment. If we fail, it is a chance to cultivate perseverance. The Stoic does not pray for an easier life. They pray for the wisdom to learn from each hardship. When they succeed, pain ceases to be darkness and becomes the lamp that guides their inner growth. In today's world, where people often numb negative emotions with medication, distraction, or busyness, Stoicism offers a timeless reminder. Only by sitting still with our pain can we truly understand peace. Peace is not the absence of storms. It is the ability to remain grounded amid them. When we stop running from pain, it stops chasing us. When we face it with open eyes, it dissolves. What remains is not emptiness, but clarity, empathy, and gratitude. The Stoics teach that pain is not the thief of happiness. It is its guide. True happiness is not dependent on circumstance, but born of deep understanding and love for life itself, in all its imperfection. To the Stoics, pain was never just an experience. It was a tool for the cultivation of the soul. They believed that life does not hand us suffering to punish us, but to test whether we can rise above it through reason. Epictetus said, "No one can harm me unless I consent to it in my mind." This captures the essence of Stoic self-mastery, the cornerstone of their philosophy. External pain holds power only when it finds entry into the mind. But if we can draw a clear line between what we control and what we do not, even in hardship, we remain free. The Stoic trains the mind to become an unbreachable fortress, where pain may knock, but can never dwell. And in that autonomy, they find a peace that the world can neither give nor take away. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself each morning, "Today, I will meet the ungrateful, the unjust, the deceitful, but I will not be angry, for they act according to their nature." He understood that when we let others' actions dictate our emotions, we surrender our freedom. So he chose to meet injury with compassion, not resentment. The Stoic refuses to let the world make them bitter. They remain calm even when betrayed, patient even when misunderstood, and kind even when hurt. That is not weakness. It is strength. For if we lose our virtue because someone else has erred, then pain has truly conquered us. Seneca once wrote to his student, "Pain does not come to destroy us, but to give us the chance to practice virtue." To him, every hardship was a test of moral understanding. Courage means nothing unless fear exists. Forgiveness means nothing unless we are wronged. Patience has no proof unless we endure injustice. The Stoic does not flee these tests. They step into them with gratitude, knowing that only action within adversity turns philosophy into character. By practicing virtue in suffering, they transform pain into strength and trials into opportunities to grow wiser and kinder each day. Epictetus often reminded his students, "We cannot choose our circumstances, but we can choose our attitude." That is the key to inner freedom. When the world collapses, the Stoic does not ask, "Why me?" but "What should I do now?" When everything is lost, they do not despair. They begin with what remains. This is how they refuse to be trapped in darkness. They understand that pain is a natural part of existence. It cannot be eliminated, only transformed. And when we turn pain into purposeful action, it becomes meaningful. A wound used to heal others is no longer a wound. It is a mark of courage. The Stoics teach that no suffering is wasted if it is used to make the world a little better. Today, in a world that encourages people to avoid discomfort at all costs, Stoicism reminds us that true strength lies not in feeling no pain, but in refusing to let pain define us. When we can rise after failure, smile after loss, and stay kind after betrayal, we have reached the summit of freedom. For real freedom is not the power to do whatever we wish, but the peace to remain steady when we cannot have what we wish for. The Stoics understood this well. Pain does not destroy us. Only futile resistance does. And when we learn to let things come and go like the wind, we realize that peace is not a gift from the world, but the reward of a soul that has made peace with its own suffering. The Stoics did not try to silence pain. They learned to converse with it. They understood that suffering is like an uninvited guest. The more we try to drive it away, the longer it stays. But if we open the door, invite it to sit, and listen to what it brings, it will leave when its message is delivered. Epictetus said, "What frightens us most are the things we do not yet understand." To the Stoic, pain is a mirror reflecting the ego. It shows us where we still cling, where we still fear, where we still resist impermanence. And when we have the courage to look into that mirror, we begin to see ourselves more clearly. The Stoic does not seek to erase pain. They let it teach them what joy never could. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Pain exists only in the mind. When the mind learns to see differently, pain transforms." He was not advocating emotional coldness, but mental clarity. When we focus on the essence of events instead of reacting to them, we realize that pain is simply the friction between expectation and reality. When we loosen our expectations, pain lessens. When we release the urge to control, peace returns. The Stoic lives in the world as it is, not in the world of what if. They accept things as they are, no additions, no demands, and in that simplicity, they find deep serenity, like a lake no longer reflecting the storm above, but only the light of wisdom. Seneca wrote in letters to Lucilius, "When we learn endurance, we have learned to live." He treated suffering as a skill, no different from learning music or training the body. To master pain, one must practice daily. Every time we are hurt, instead of fleeing, we can treat it as a lesson in resilience. Every disappointment is a chance to strengthen patience. Every insult, an opportunity to cultivate forgiveness. For the Stoic, life is a vast school where every wound is part of the curriculum. Those who learn from pain will never be its victims, for they have transformed it into a teacher guiding them toward mastery of self. Epictetus once told a story. When his former master broke his leg in anger, he calmly said, "I told you it would break." He lost part of his body, but not his peace. The lesson was not about endurance alone. It was about freedom. When the mind becomes still, even physical pain cannot shake the soul. The Stoics saw the body as temporary, but the mind as eternal. They did not deny pain, but they refused to let it rule them. Once emotion no longer dictates perception, pain loses its power. What remains is not torment, but freedom. The kind no chain or circumstance can touch. In today's world, filled with noise, distraction, and an obsession with avoiding discomfort, the Stoic message is more vital than ever. They remind us that the path through pain is not escape, but acceptance. When we learn to sit still amid the storm, pain no longer terrifies us. When we see that every wound hides a lesson, we begin to thank even the things that once made us weep. And when we turn pain into strength, life ceases to be an enemy and becomes an ally, a journey where every joy and every sorrow holds value. That is the true art of Stoic living, not to flee from suffering nor to drown in it, but to use it to forge a soul that is free, steady, and unbreakable. The Stoics understood that pain is inevitable, but suffering is a choice. Epictetus once said, "No one can make you suffer unless you allow it." This was not a denial of emotion. It was an affirmation of the mind's sovereignty. When loss, betrayal, or failure strikes, we stand at a crossroads, to resent or to accept. The Stoic chooses the latter, not out of weakness, but out of wisdom. They know that nothing wounds us more deeply than our own mistaken judgments about pain. When we see an event as a disaster, we suffer. When we see it as a lesson, we grow. And in that instant of changed perception, pain ceases to be a prison. It becomes a path to freedom. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "What happens to me is ordered by nature for my own good." This reflects a profound trust in the harmony of the universe. The Stoics did not claim that everything is good, but that everything is necessary. One can only understand light after walking through darkness, only value peace after knowing chaos. To them, pain is not the enemy of happiness. It is what gives happiness its meaning. Marcus did not avoid hardship. He faced it, led through it, and reflected amidst it. Even surrounded by the clang of swords and the smoke of battle, he found peace. Not because the war had ended, but because his mind had learned to be still. That is the essence of Stoic strength, to find calm in the loudest places. Seneca went even further, saying, "He who does not know how to suffer does not know how to love life." He believed that if we love only the sunny days and despise the rain, we do not truly love life. The Stoic loves completely, joy and pain alike, because they understand that both are parts of the same masterpiece. The beauty of human life lies not in avoiding darkness, but in learning to shine within it. Seneca lost his only son, yet he refused to let grief consume him. Instead, he wrote, "True love never dies. It merely changes form." His sorrow became a flame that lit his compassion, allowing him to write some of philosophy's most tender reflections on resilience and faith in life. Epictetus also taught that we cannot change the world, but we can change our relationship with it. When someone insults us, it is a chance to practice forgiveness. When we fail, it is a lesson in perseverance. When we lose something, it is a training in letting go. The Stoic does not suppress emotion. They simply refuse to be ruled by it. They let tears fall, but do not drown in despair. They feel pain, but do not become pain. And when they achieve this, suffering transforms into awareness. It ceases to be a wound and becomes a mark of understanding, etched on the soul. Today, in an age where people seek quick fixes for every wound, from tranquilizers to social media, Stoicism calls us back to the simplicity of the soul. It teaches that healing does not come from escape, but from encounter. When we sit quietly with our pain, observe it, and understand it, we find that behind every suffering lies a door to insight. And when that door opens, we do not merely step out of pain, we step into a wiser, more compassionate version of ourselves. In the end, true freedom does not belong to those who live without pain, but to those who can smile through it, knowing it is but a small fragment in the vast, magnificent tapestry of life. The Stoics did not merely learn to endure pain, they learned to transform it into strength. They did not let suffering harden their hearts. They let it deepen their souls. Epictetus said, "When you lose something, do not say, 'I have lost it,' but say, 'I have returned it.'" To him, everything in life is borrowed. Our wealth, our loved ones, even our bodies. When life takes something back, it is not theft, but restoration. This way of seeing frees one from the fear of loss. For when we understand that nothing truly belongs to us, we begin to cherish what we have instead of fearing its absence. And when pain arises from loss, the Stoic does not ask why. They quietly give thanks for having once had the chance to love, to live, to experience. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, "All that happens is woven into the fabric of nature. You can either align yourself with it or be swept away." He saw pain as a great river. If you thrash, you drown. If you flow with it, you learn to swim. The Stoic chooses to move in rhythm with that current. They no longer ask, "Why am I in pain?" but, "What can I learn from it?" They believe that every hardship carries a seed of wisdom, and it is our task to uncover it. When resistance ceases, pain becomes transparent, like water reflecting our own image. And in that reflection, we see that pain was never outside us. It was the very force shaping us toward wholeness. Seneca wrote in a famous letter, "No one becomes great without being tested by suffering." To him, pain was the forge of virtue. A sword that has never met the hammer cannot shine. A soul that has never hurt cannot grow deep. The Stoic does not avoid adversity. They enter it like a blacksmith enters the fire, not fearing the flames, but seeking to be refined. Through suffering, they discover their inner strength, and when they rise again, they do not just become stronger, they become kinder. For those who have suffered understand compassion, and those who have fallen know how to lift others up. In pain, they find connection, the invisible thread binding all human hearts through shared experience. Epictetus taught his students, "When you are tempted to complain, remember that you are protesting the class the divine has assigned you." The divine, here, is not a deity, but the natural order, the universe's unfolding logic. When we suffer, we are not victims, but students in life's classroom. To resent pain is to delay learning. To accept it is to grow. The Stoic does not call pain fair or unfair. They simply call it necessary. Just as muscles strengthen under weight, the soul grows through endurance. When we understand this, we stop asking, "When will this end?" and begin asking, "How can I leave this with a better heart?" In our modern world, obsessed with comfort and allergic to discomfort, Stoic philosophy stands as a quiet lantern, reminding us that pain is a natural part of a life worth living. A life without pain would also be a life without depth. For it is through the cracks that light enters, through loss that we learn to love completely. through failure, that we learn to rise with gratitude. The Stoic does not seek perfection, they seek truth. And the truth is this: happiness does not come from avoiding pain, but from the ability to smile within it. When we can look at suffering and say, "You no longer frighten me," that is the moment we touch true freedom, the freedom that can only be forged by a soul tempered in adversity. As the Stoic journey draws to its end, it offers no promise of heaven, no reward beyond the grave, but it leaves behind a light, a lamp to illuminate the inner path. The Stoic understands that life is not something to be controlled, but something to be experienced with awareness. They live with the knowledge that every day is an opportunity for practice, to practice patience when tested, gratitude when blessed, calm when provoked, and compassion when meeting someone who suffers more deeply. Their philosophy is not cold or distant. It breathes with life. It does not ask us to withdraw from the world, but to love it more wisely, to love with understanding, to love with awareness, and to love with freedom. Epictetus, Seneca, and Marcus Aurelius, the three great souls of Stoicism, lived in very different worlds. One was a slave, one a statesman, one an emperor. Yet they met at a single truth. Peace does not come from status, but from the soul. They proved that even when the world is unjust, one can still be just. Even when chained, the mind can remain free. And even when everything is taken away, one can still hold on to kindness. Their lives became proof that philosophy is not for books. It is for breathing. That is why their wisdom endures, reaching across centuries to speak to the confused hearts of the 21st century, an age where humanity has everything, yet often feels lost. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "When you rise in the morning, remember what a precious privilege it is to think, to love, and to act with virtue." His words remain a reminder to us all. Inner freedom is not distant. It is something we can practice today. When we choose not to react in anger, we practice freedom. When we choose gratitude over complaint, we practice freedom. When we choose forgiveness over revenge, we practice freedom. For true freedom does not mean doing whatever we desire. It means not being ruled by our desires. The Stoic does not live to conquer others. They live to conquer themselves. And that victory is the greatest of all, because it needs no audience, no applause, only the quiet peace within. Seneca once wrote, "No wind is favorable to the one who does not know where he is going." Stoicism gives humanity a compass to steer through the stormy sea of life. It teaches that we cannot control the wind, but we can control the sail. We cannot stop the rain, but we can choose how to walk through it. We cannot avoid death, but we can choose to live in a way worthy of every breath. In our modern world, drowning in anxiety, ambition, and endless comparison, Stoicism calls us back to simplicity, to live rightly in the present, to act with virtue, to love with compassion, and to accept what we cannot change. When we do this, we stop being tossed by life and become its pilot, steady, calm, and free. And when we look back, we realize that Stoicism is not a philosophy of hardship, but of deep happiness. The kind that does not depend on what we have, but on how we live. It teaches that pain is not the enemy, but the companion that helps us understand ourselves. It teaches that peace does not come from the world, but from the way we perceive it. And above all, it teaches that we never truly lose everything, as long as we keep a clear mind and a kind heart. When we understand this, fear fades. We know that even when storms rise, we can remain still. And in that stillness, we find what every philosopher and every soul has always sought: freedom, the kind that no one can take away, for it is born from a spirit tempered by suffering and radiant with wisdom.